A man with no friends or a very small circle is a very, very safe man. Denzel Washington. True strength is found not in numbers, but in solitude. Denzel Washington. On Stoic In Your Life, let's explore why a man with no friends or a very small circle can be one of the safest and strongest individuals you'll encounter. This isn't about isolation or coldness. It's about a man who's learned to walk alone, secure in his identity, unshaken by the need for approval. In a world desperate for validation and connection, he's discovered a rare freedom, the power of self-reliance. He spent time in silence, faced his fears, and asked himself the hard questions. And he's found peace not through others, but through a profound understanding of himself. This type of man doesn't need the constant noise or applause. He's grown strong in his solitude, confident without a crowd. When you learn to be alone, to embrace the silence, you find a clarity that few ever know. In this solitude, there's strength, peace, and an unbreakable resolve. Friendships bring beauty and warmth to our lives, offering moments of shared laughter, companionship, and memories that echo through time. Yet, for a man grounded in his purpose and secure in himself, the quantity of friendships doesn't define his value or his peace. He's learned that his worth isn't tied to how popular he is or how many people orbit his world. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This man is wealthy in his self-sufficiency, finding a kind of quiet strength in not seeking validation from others, but instead focusing on his path, his growth, and his principles. He's aware that those who truly align with his values will naturally gravitate toward him, but he's not preoccupied with collecting people to avoid loneliness. Rather, he invests in his inner journey, understanding that true peace is born from within, not from an endless pursuit of social approval. For a man who is comfortable in solitude, time alone is not a void to be filled with endless activity or superficial company, but an opportunity to deepen his understanding of himself. In the silence of his own company, he learns to face his fears, acknowledge his strengths, and confront his insecurities, insights that would be difficult to glean amid the noise of constant interaction. As Seneca wisely put it, as long as you are ruled by the opinion of others, you are enslaved by them. This man knows that the strength he derives from self-knowledge and self-acceptance is unshakable because it's rooted in his own resolve rather than in the fleeting opinions of others. This journey of self-discovery isn't always easy. It requires courage and patience, but it fosters a resilience that can withstand life's storms without needing others to fill emotional voids or mask his vulnerabilities. He understands, too, that not all friendships are beneficial. In fact, the wrong relationships can drain him, introducing stress, drama, or values that clash with his own. A secure man prioritizes his inner peace over social expectations, and because of this, he exercises discernment in choosing his companions. He knows that quality far outweighs quantity when it comes to relationships, so he's selective, protecting his mental space from those who might undermine his calm or sidetrack his purpose. This is not about isolation or arrogance, but about wisdom and self-respect, as Marcus Aurelius reminds us. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. A wise man surrounds himself only with those whose presence enhances his life rather than complicates it. This commitment to a clean mind often leads him down a quieter path, one marked by fewer yet more meaningful connections, which in turn leaves space for a life of clarity and fulfillment. When he does decide to let others in, it's because they resonate with his values and respect his boundaries, not because he needs them to feel complete. He's open to connection but not desperate for it, careful to protect his time, energy, and mind. When he connects, he seeks depth, authenticity, and mutual respect, qualities that transcend superficial interactions. In today's world, where friendships can sometimes be as transient as digital connections, and where many relationships are built on convenience rather than true understanding, This man values the rare bond that stands the test of time and offers real companionship. He's perfectly content walking alone if that means staying true to himself and his principles. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "The only way to have a friend is to be one." This man embodies this sentiment, understanding that authentic relationships stem from mutual respect, shared values, and a commitment to growth. In modern life, where social media often exaggerates the importance of large social networks, the message of a man at peace in solitude is particularly relevant. He is a reminder that we don't need to be surrounded by others to find meaning and purpose. Instead of constantly seeking new connections, consider nurturing the relationship you have with yourself. Reflect on your values, understand your boundaries, and trust that the right people will appear naturally when they align with your journey. Embracing solitude can be a path to clarity, purpose, and strength, offering you the resilience to walk confidently without relying on external validation. Remember, as the Stoics believed, that virtue, not popularity, is the true measure of a person's worth. So take time to cultivate this inner foundation, for a man who can stand strong alone is indeed a very safe man. In today's world, we're often told that being alone is something to fix, that it's a void we should fill with endless social connections. Society suggests that the more people we surround ourselves with, the more complete we are. But let me share something different. A secure man understands that standing alone isn't a weakness. It's a rare kind of strength, a choice that few can make and even fewer can master. This man, who has learned to be at peace with his own company, doesn't seek friendships just to avoid solitude or to feel validated. He's walked his own path, faced his own struggles, and come to appreciate the power of self-reliance. This man's worth isn't tied to the approval of others. It's tied to his own sense of purpose, his own principles, and his unbreakable inner confidence. He's learned that true power doesn't come from being popular or accepted by everyone. It comes from knowing yourself so deeply that the opinions of others no longer sway you. Have you ever felt that pressure to be surrounded by people, to be constantly connected, as though it would somehow make you more worthy or valued? This man, the one who has mastered his solitude, knows that real peace doesn't come from collecting friends or building a social circle just for the sake of having one. No, his peace is built in the moments of silence, when he can look himself in the eye and feel secure not because anyone else says so, but because he's earned it. When you're truly comfortable with yourself, you don't feel the need to prove anything. You don't need the praise, the attention, or the validation that others might seek. And this doesn't make you isolated or cold. It makes you resilient. Like Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This man's thoughts are focused on self-respect, on growth and on inner strength, not on the fleeting praise or acceptance from others. His confidence is deeply rooted, and it doesn't shake because it's built from within. You see, this man has walked through fire. He's been tested in ways that few will ever truly understand. He's had to confront his own doubts, weaknesses, and regrets, and in doing so, he's developed a level of strength that's difficult to find in a crowd. He's come face to face with himself in those quiet, solitary moments, and he's had the courage to accept what he sees. Maybe you've had times like this too, moments when life forced you to rely on yourself, when you had to push through challenges without anyone to hold your hand. Think about how those experiences shaped you. They were tough, yes, but they also made you stronger, more aware of your own resilience. This man doesn't need applause because he knows the work he's done. His worth isn't determined by anyone else's approval. He's come to a place where he respects himself so deeply that no one else's opinion can shake him. That's a rare form of strength, one built through hard experiences, through solitude, and through the willingness to look within. In a world that constantly pushes us to be liked, to chase validation and gather followers, imagine the freedom of not needing any of that. Imagine the peace that comes with not feeling compelled to prove your worth to anyone. This man knows that kind of freedom. He's built his life on a foundation of inner security, and because of that, he can move through the world without bending to it. This doesn't mean he rejects friendships or human connection, but he values depth over superficiality. When he lets someone into his life, it's not out of a need for approval, but because they bring something real, something valuable, something that resonates with the life he's built. He's not interested in shallow connections. He's after meaningful interactions that respect who he is and what he stands for. In modern life, especially with the constant influence of social media, we're bombarded with the idea that having more connections makes us more fulfilled, more successful, more liked. But how often does that really bring peace? How often does it truly add to our happiness? A man who has learned to stand alone knows the answer to this. He's found his peace not by surrounding himself with people, but by facing himself, by asking the hard questions, and by being okay with the answers, even when they're uncomfortable. This self-knowledge, this inner peace is what makes him truly strong. It's not about isolation. It's about finding strength in solitude and being okay with your own company. He doesn't need noise to drown out his thoughts because he's comfortable with the silence. Now ask yourself, are you truly comfortable with yourself? Can you be alone without feeling the need to reach out for validation? Or do you find yourself constantly seeking others to feel complete? If you've been there, if you felt that need to fill the silence, perhaps there's something here worth considering. Imagine building a life where your confidence isn't dependent on anyone else, where your peace is self-made and your worth is self-determined. There's a power in that, a freedom that few people ever truly experience. This man's journey reminds us that the real validation we need comes from within. When you understand yourself deeply and accept yourself fully, you find a peace that no crowd can provide, and that's a lesson worth learning. It's about creating a life where your happiness and your strength are built on a foundation that no one can take away from you. That, my friends, is true security, true peace, and true strength. In a world where everything seems to measure us by how many people surround us, where value is determined by the number of likes, followers, or friends we collect, there exists a kind of man who has detached himself from these measures of worth. Imagine this man. He's not living for others' approval or waiting for someone else to tell him he's valuable. His worth isn't defined by a large social circle or by the eyes of people watching his every move. Instead, his value is built on something far more resilient: his integrity, his character, and the path he has chosen to walk. Think for a moment. How often do we feel the need to fill our lives with people to feel whole? How many times do we seek affirmation from others to feel like we belong? This man has transcended those needs. He finds peace in the quiet, in the moments when it's just him and his thoughts. Because he has worked hard to build a solid foundation within. He's faced his past, learned from his mistakes, and made peace with himself. He's resolved his regrets, confronted his insecurities, and emerged from those confrontations stronger and more secure. He's done what so few are willing to do. He's met himself fully, and he's accepted what he's found. This level of self-acceptance doesn't just come from living a life filled with people. It comes from a life filled with purpose. His purpose is to live in alignment with his values, to continue growing, and to understand himself deeply. When he sits in silence, he isn't haunted by regrets or unfinished business, because he knows he's doing his best with the life he's been given. For some, this man's choice to walk alone might be confusing. They may look at him and think, how can he be content without a big social circle? Doesn't he get lonely? But that kind of thinking says more about them than it does about him. It reveals a mindset that values appearances and numbers over substance and authenticity. They see solitude and assume it's emptiness. Yet for this man, solitude isn't a void. It's a rich space where he finds clarity, peace, and strength. As Seneca once said, the greatest wealth is to live content with little. This man is wealthy in a way few understand. He's rich in his own company, grounded in his own mind, and fulfilled in his own journey. He's not afraid of being misunderstood because he knows that true understanding comes from within, not from trying to explain himself to others. He's not performing for an audience or seeking to impress. His life is his own. His journey is his own. And he's okay with walking his path without needing validation from others. And there's power in that, isn't there? He's learned to find strength not in the presence of others, but in his own resilience. His strength is like a mountain, as Epictetus might say, rooted firmly in the earth, unshaken by the winds of opinion, and undisturbed by the storms of criticism. His strength is steady, not because it's loud or flashy, but because it's deeply grounded in who he is. He doesn't need to display it. He doesn't need an audience to witness it. He's found a quiet strength, one that doesn't shout or demand attention, but simply exists, unwavering and firm. Imagine how freeing it would be to live that way, to know that your worth doesn't rise and fall based on how others see you. Have you ever felt the urge to live for yourself instead of for others? To step back from the noise and ask yourself what truly matters to you? This man has asked those questions, and he's answered them in his own way. He doesn't need to impress. He doesn't need applause. He's comfortable letting his actions speak for themselves, confident in the choices he's made. And that's the thing. He's not rejecting people or connection. He's simply selective about where he places his energy. When he lets people into his life, it's because they add real value, because they resonate with his values, and because they respect who he is. He's not looking for superficial friendships or quick validation. He's looking for authenticity, depth, and mutual respect. When he connects with others, it's genuine, not driven by a need to be accepted or validated. In our modern, fast-paced world where social media constantly reinforces the idea that we need to be seen, admired, and connected, his lifestyle is almost a rebellion. He's not chasing likes, followers, or social status. His self-worth isn't tied to how many people think highly of him. Instead, he finds his worth in his own eyes, in the way he lives his life, and in his commitment to his own path. This man knows that real happiness doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the inside. He's built a life where his peace, his strength, and his fulfillment come from within. And because of that, he's free from the need for constant approval. Like a solid tree rooted deep in the earth, he stands tall not because others see him, but because he knows who he is. And in solitude, he finds his sanctuary, a place where he can recharge, reflect, and renew. Solitude, for him, is not a place of loneliness, but a place of strength. It's a time to connect with his own spirit, to listen to his own voice, and to be at peace. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. This man embodies that sentiment. He's found freedom in being himself, in living for his values, and in walking his unique path. Solitude has become his ally, his place of power, and his space for growth. In a world so full of noise and distractions, he has found clarity in the quiet. Imagine the freedom that would come from releasing the need for external validation, from living a life where your confidence is self-made, your peace is self-cultivated, and your worth is self-defined. This man's journey is a reminder to all of us that true strength, true peace, and true happiness come from within. When you build your life on a foundation of self-worth, when you learn to walk alone with confidence, you find a strength that no one can take away from you. This man has tapped into a wisdom that many of us overlook, that true worth isn't something measured by the approval of others. In a world that often makes us feel like our value is tied to likes, followers, and public recognition, he's chosen a different path. He's freed himself from that chase because he understands that the applause of others is temporary, a fleeting echo that doesn't define who he is or what he's capable of. His worth, his true value, is grounded in the quiet strength of his character, not in the quantity of attention he receives. He's found a way to build a life that's centered on purpose, rather than popularity. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This man's thoughts are focused on his values, his mission, and the legacy he's crafting, not on who's paying attention. There's a unique courage that comes with living this way. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages that tell us we need others to feel complete, he's found a completeness in his own company. This man isn't afraid of solitude because he sees it as an opportunity, a chance to recharge, to reflect, and to reconnect with what truly matters. He knows that in the quiet, he can hear his own voice more clearly, unclouded by the noise of others' opinions. He's faced his own inner world, confronted his doubts and fears, and has learned to be content with who he is. As Seneca wisely put it, if you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. And this man has embraced that, becoming a person who finds fulfillment not through external applause, but through a steady, self-built sense of purpose. Imagine the strength it takes to stand apart, to walk a path where you don't need the world's approval to feel worthy. This man knows that kind of strength. He's like a tree that grows deeply rooted in the earth, unaffected by the winds of others' expectations. He isn't out there seeking attention or trying to impress anyone because he's already impressed himself with the life he's built. He knows that the opinions of others are like passing storms. They may sway the branches, but they won't uproot him. And while some may not understand this choice, that doesn't faze him. He doesn't need to be understood or accepted by everyone because he's living for himself, honoring his own values and his own truth. This man walks his path with a quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing he's living with integrity. And this kind of life doesn't mean he's isolated or closed off from connection. On the contrary, it means he's more intentional with who he lets into his world. He's not interested in superficial friendships or empty praise. When he connects with others, it's on a level that goes beyond surface impressions. He values depth, mutual respect, and authenticity. His relationships are few but meaningful, and he doesn't compromise his peace for the sake of company. He's learned that true strength, as Epictetus taught, comes from within and isn't swayed by the approval or disapproval of others. This man's life is a reminder that strength isn't about who's watching. It's about who you are when no one is watching. In a society that often makes us feel that we need to be seen to matter, this man's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Real fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from living a life aligned with your core values. Think about it. How often do we get caught up in proving ourselves to others, in feeling the need to show that we belong or that we're successful? This man has let go of that need because he's proven himself to the only person who truly matters. Himself. He's found his peace, his strength, and his confidence in solitude, where he doesn't have to perform for anyone else. This man's journey is a reminder that we have the power to define our own lives, to find strength within, and to live in a way that honors who we truly are. He teaches us that the most resilient kind of strength isn't about standing in a crowd. It's about standing alone, grounded, confident, and unshaken. In a world that often seems obsessed with likes and approval, his story is a call to return to ourselves, to cultivate a life that doesn't need validation because it's already full, already complete, and already whole. In a world that constantly pushes us to seek approval, to fit in, to gather people around us as proof of our worth, there is something undeniably powerful about a man who chooses to walk his path alone. This man has reached a level of freedom that most never experience. He's freed himself from the need for validation, from the pressure to conform, and from the fear of solitude. He's learned that his worth is not something anyone else can give or take away. It's something he defines for himself, something he carries within. And because of that, he's unbreakable. He doesn't need friends to feel valued or a crowd to feel secure. He's found his strength in his own sense of purpose, and that's a rare, beautiful thing. This is a man who moves through life with a quiet confidence, with a peace that only comes from truly knowing and respecting himself. Have you ever noticed how much we rely on the approval of others? How often we look to others to feel validated, hoping their opinions will reassure us that we're enough. This man has left that need behind. He knows that the world's applause is fleeting and that no amount of admiration will give him lasting peace. He's focused instead on the quality of his life, on the depth of his principles, and on the legacy he's building. He knows that real success isn't measured in numbers or likes. It's measured in character, in integrity, and in the unwavering commitment to live by one's values. He understands that, as Marcus Aurelius once said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And so he's made the choice to fill his thoughts with purpose, not with the shallow distractions of social validation. Living this way takes courage, a courage that most never find. It takes the courage to sit with yourself, to face the silence, and to listen to your own mind without interference. In today's fast-paced world where so many are constantly surrounded by noise, this man has discovered the gift of solitude. He's given himself the freedom to be alone, and in that space, he's learned to hear his own voice. He's not afraid of what he'll find in that quiet because he's built a relationship with himself that's honest and secure. He's faced his flaws, his insecurities, and his regrets, and instead of running from them, he's embraced them. He understands, as Epictetus once taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. And through solitude, he has become his own master, unchained from the need to please anyone but himself. In a world where so many of us are distracted by the noise of others' expectations, he stands grounded, unshaken, and deeply rooted. He doesn't feel the need to broadcast his accomplishments, nor does he seek attention for his choices. He knows that real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to be put on display for the world to validate. His strength is like a mountain, silent, steady, and resilient, unaffected by the passing winds of others' opinions. He's built a kind of confidence that's rare because it comes from within, from a place of true self-respect. He's not against friendships or connections. In fact, he values them deeply. But he understands that companionship is not a necessity for him to feel whole. When he chooses to connect with others, it's intentional, meaningful, and based on mutual respect. He doesn't collect friends to fill a void. He chooses people who align with his values and enrich his life, not define it. The relationships he builds aren't based on need but on choice. He's not looking for anyone to make him feel complete, because he's already complete. He's found that the only validation he needs comes from living a life aligned with his principles. He understands, as Seneca said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. He isn't waiting for external approval or for someone else to tell him he's worthy. He knows his worth, and that knowledge guides him. He's not constantly reaching out for company to distract him from himself. Instead, he's embraced solitude, seeing it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to reflect. He's found that the moments of quiet are where he truly understands himself, where he can think deeply and clarify his values without the influence of others. This man's journey serves as a reminder that there's incredible strength in standing alone. In a society where we're conditioned to believe that being alone is a problem to be fixed, he's showing us that solitude can be a sanctuary. When you're alone, you're not putting on a mask, you're not performing. You're simply yourself. You're free to understand your own mind, to follow your own path, and to build a life that doesn't rely on the applause of others. How often do you seek validation from others because you're not sure of your own worth? This man's life challenges us to reconsider these habits, to ask whether we're truly comfortable in our own company. Imagine what it would be like to live with the kind of freedom he has, to know that you don't need anyone else's approval to feel valuable, to have a confidence that doesn't waver, not because of who surrounds you, but because of who you are when you're alone. This man has found that confidence, and it's a reminder that each of us has the potential to build a life that's self-sufficient, grounded, and true. In a world obsessed with being seen, he teaches us that there's a kind of power in not needing to be seen at all. He lives a life of quiet fulfillment, knowing that his strength, his peace, and his happiness are his own, independent of anyone else's opinion. In the end, this man's story is about the freedom that comes from self-acceptance, from a life lived with purpose, and from the ability to find peace in solitude. His journey reminds us that the most valuable relationship you can cultivate is the one with yourself. It's a relationship that can't be taken away by anyone else, one that isn't shaken by the highs and lows of external approval. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson he offers us. That we too can find fulfillment not by collecting others' opinions, but by building a life aligned with our own values. So, what would it mean for you to let go of the need for constant company, for endless approval? Could you find the strength to stand alone, to define your own worth, and to live a life that's fully, unapologetically your own? This man shows us that it's possible, and that it's a journey worth taking. This man isn't closed off from the world. He simply learned that true peace comes from within, not from seeking approval or validation from others. He's open to connection, but he's intentional about who he lets in, knowing that every relationship carries its own energy and influence. For him, every person who enters his life has the power to affect his well-being, his focus, and his sense of peace, so he chooses with care. He values his inner calm too much to allow just anyone in. He doesn't surround himself with people just to avoid feeling alone, nor does he fill his days with superficial friendships to appear well-liked or validated. Instead, he's secure in his own presence, aware that the strength he's cultivated within is far more valuable than any crowd. As the Stoic Epictetus taught, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." This man embodies this wisdom, and it's what sets him apart. He isn't looking for shallow friendships that come and go with convenience. He's not interested in people who show up only when life is easy, but are nowhere to be found when things get tough. He values depth over quantity, and he knows that real friendships are there for the honest, sometimes difficult moments, the times that test truth, loyalty, and commitment. If having a smaller circle means fewer distractions and more meaningful connections, he's more than content with that. He doesn't need a large group to feel secure. He's grounded in his own values, and those values guide him. This choice isn't about isolation, it's about self-respect. He respects himself enough to protect his peace, and he respects his time enough to reserve it for those who bring genuine value to his life. For him, true value doesn't come from the number of people in his life, but from the quality of his relationships. He understands that his worth isn't tied to social validation, and he's not chasing acceptance. He knows that the people who matter, the ones worth his time, will recognize his worth without him having to prove it. He doesn't change who he is to fit in or to seek approval because he's built a solid foundation of self-worth. His actions speak for themselves. When he walks into a room, his confidence is quiet, but powerful. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's rooted in self-knowledge. This man knows that in the end, the only constant he has is himself. Friends come and go, people drift in and out of our lives, but he understands that the one person who will be with him through every moment is himself. With that awareness, he's dedicated time to becoming someone he can rely on, someone who doesn't need to seek comfort outside of himself. He spent time alone, learning who he truly is, and building a foundation that is unshakable. He's not looking to others to fill the role of support or self-assurance because he's become that for himself. He's comfortable in his own company, and he's found that solitude is not loneliness but a space for growth, reflection, and strength. He's chosen to embrace solitude as an opportunity to think clearly, to hear his own voice without the noise of the world, and to connect deeply with his own values and vision. When people look at him, they may assume he's missing out, that his solitude is a sign of loneliness, or that his quiet demeanor reflects emptiness. But he knows better. He knows that there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. His solitude is intentional, a space where he can recharge and refocus, a sanctuary where he can remain grounded and true to himself. He's not avoiding connection. He's simply choosing connections that align with who he is. The relationships he has are meaningful, based on mutual respect, authenticity, and shared values. He's not seeking anyone's presence out of desperation or need. He's choosing to share his life with people who enrich it, not define it. So what about you? Are you content with your own company, or do you rely on others to feel valuable? Have you invested time in building a relationship with yourself, one that doesn't depend on the approval of others? In a world that often encourages us to seek validation from external sources, this man's journey offers a different perspective. He teaches us that real security, real strength, comes from within. It's a reminder that we don't need others to feel complete. We only need to live a life that's true to our own values. Imagine if we all took the time to become our own source of support. If we all found peace in solitude rather than constantly seeking it in others. This man's story challenges us to look inward, to find fulfillment not in the number of people around us, but in the quality of our relationship with ourselves. His strength isn't about being unapproachable or isolated. It's about knowing himself so well that he can stand firm, even in solitude. He's found a level of peace and self-respect that makes him resilient, and that's something few people understand. While the world tells us to seek endless connection, he shows us the power of choosing only what aligns with our truth. His life isn't about impressing others or collecting relationships to feel important. It's about living with integrity, with a commitment to his values, and with the freedom that comes from not needing external validation. His journey teaches us that the most important relationship we can cultivate is the one with ourselves. A relationship that once built is unbreakable. At the end of the day, he reminds us that we have the power to define our own worth, to choose relationships that add real value, and to walk our own path with confidence. He lives a life of quiet fulfillment, knowing that his peace, his strength, and his happiness are his own, independent of anyone else's opinion. So ask yourself, are you content with who you are when the world is quiet? Are you comfortable standing alone, secure in the knowledge that you don't need anyone else to feel valuable? This man's story challenges us to redefine our view of strength and fulfillment, to find true peace within ourselves, and to build a life that doesn't rely on others but thrives in self-assurance and purpose. His path may be less traveled, but it's a path of genuine freedom, and it's open to anyone willing to walk it. What many people don't realize about this man is that he's not missing anything by choosing a quieter path. In fact, he's discovered a fulfillment that's deeper and more lasting than most people ever find. He's found a sense of wholeness within himself that isn't dependent on anyone else's approval or validation. This fulfillment is entirely his, something he's built through years of self-reflection, growth, and personal trials. It's a kind of peace that can't be bought, given, or taken away. It's something he alone has cultivated. So while others may look at his solitude and wonder if he's lonely, he knows that he's achieved a kind of contentment that many people never reach, often because they're too busy searching for it outside themselves. This inner peace isn't a show. He doesn't feel the need to flaunt it or prove it to anyone, because it's not for them. It's his own. It's the result of a journey only he has walked, a path that's taught him the irreplaceable value of being able to stand on his own 2 feet. As the Stoic Epictetus once said, "He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing." This man has learned that lesson, finding satisfaction not in what others think of him, but in the person he's become. The confidence he carries isn't about arrogance. It's a quiet, unshakable strength that comes from knowing who he is and what he stands for. He doesn't need to bend himself to fit into someone else's expectations or change to gain acceptance. He's comfortable with the understanding that people who truly value him will accept him as he is, and those who don't, well, they aren't meant to walk his path with him, and he's entirely at peace with that. This kind of strength doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't seek attention or validation from others. Instead, it's a steady, grounded self-assurance that allows him to move through life with clarity and purpose. He doesn't need to prove himself to anyone, because he's already proved himself to the only person who truly matters, himself. This man understands that the only constant in life is himself. Friends may come and go, people may drift in and out of our lives, but he knows that in the end, he is the only person who will be with him through every single moment. With this understanding, he's made a conscious choice to build a strong, reliable foundation within himself. He's taken the time to truly know who he is, to understand his own strengths and weaknesses, and to grow from his experiences. This is why he's not looking to others to fill a role that he's already embraced for himself. He's become his own source of support, his own anchor, and his own source of assurance. Some people may look at him and think he's missing out, that his solitude is a sign of loneliness or emptiness, but he knows better. He understands that there's a vast difference between being alone and being lonely. His solitude is not a void. It's a sanctuary where he finds clarity, peace, and strength. This man doesn't close himself off from connection. He values relationships deeply, but he chooses them intentionally. He's not interested in collecting acquaintances or filling his time with people who don't truly align with his values. He's willing to walk alone if that's what it takes to maintain his peace, his integrity, and his self-respect. His circle may be small, but it's meaningful. When he does let people in, it's because they genuinely add value to his life, not because he needs them to feel whole. He knows, as Seneca taught, associate with those who will make a better man of you. He surrounds himself with those who respect his boundaries, appreciate his authenticity, and understand his values. And because of this, his relationships are genuine and deep, built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than convenience or validation. In a world that constantly pushes us to seek validation and acceptance, this man's journey is a powerful reminder that real fulfillment doesn't come from others. It comes from within. Ask yourself, how often do you seek others' approval just to feel like you're enough? How many times have you looked outside yourself for the validation that only you can give? This man's life teaches us that the strength we seek is already within us, waiting to be realized. By building a life that aligns with his own values, by staying true to his own principles, he's discovered a peace that's unshakable. He knows that he doesn't need anyone else's presence to feel complete. He's comfortable in his own skin, at ease with his own thoughts, and content in his own company. This level of self-assurance, this kind of inner peace, is rare. It's a strength that doesn't waver when others don't understand or when they misinterpret his solitude as a flaw. People will always have opinions. They'll always have something to say about things they don't understand. But this man doesn't live for others' opinions. He's not here to make everyone else comfortable or to fit into their expectations. He's here to honor his own path, to live his truth, and to build a life that's meaningful to him. He knows, as Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And he's achieved that accomplishment by choosing to live for himself, to walk his own path, and to find fulfillment on his own terms. So while others may look at him and wonder why he chooses to stand alone, he knows that he's found a treasure far greater than any crowd could offer, the treasure of self-knowledge, of inner peace, and of genuine contentment. In the end, his story is a reminder that the most important relationship we'll ever have is the one we have with ourselves. This man has invested in that relationship, nurturing it, strengthening it, and allowing it to become the foundation of his life. He's shown us that we don't need the world's approval to be valuable. We only need to recognize our own worth. And he reminds us that the freedom to live according to our own values is the greatest freedom of all. What many people don't realize about this man is that he's not missing anything by walking alone. When you see him choosing solitude, don't mistake it for loneliness or for a lack of fulfillment. He's found something that many people spend their entire lives searching for, a deep, unwavering sense of wholeness within himself that doesn't depend on anyone else's validation or approval. He's built a foundation of self-respect, integrity, and inner peace that keeps him grounded and secure, regardless of who stands beside him. In a world that constantly pushes us to look outward for our sense of worth, he's taken the time to look inward, and what he's found there is something powerful. It's a sense of contentment that no one else can give or take away. He doesn't need a crowd to feel valued or friends to feel complete, because he's discovered that true fulfillment doesn't come from how many people know your name or how large your social circle is. It comes from living a life that reflects your values, a life true to who you are. And if that means he walks his path alone, He's not only okay with it, he finds strength in it. Think about how rare this is in a society that celebrates popularity and seeks external validation at every turn. Most people spend so much time and energy trying to be seen, trying to be accepted, and hoping to find their worth in the eyes of others. But this man has freed himself from that cycle. His worth isn't something that fluctuates based on others' opinions. He's built a life where his happiness and his peace aren't tied to the approval of others, and that's a freedom few ever know. This kind of confidence isn't about arrogance. It's not that he thinks he's better than anyone else. It's simply that he knows his own value. He doesn't feel the need to bend himself to fit into others' expectations or chase acceptance from people who may not even understand who he is at his core. Instead, he understands, as Epictetus once said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves." This man's peace comes from knowing who he is and honoring that, rather than seeking outside affirmation. He's not closed off to connection, but he's selective about who he allows close. He knows that every person he lets into his life brings energy, influence, and meaning, so he chooses his circle with care. He's not interested in superficial friendships or relationships built on convenience. He values people who show up for the real moments, the challenges, and the times that test loyalty and honesty. If that means his circle is small, that's a choice he's more than comfortable with because he's not trying to fill his life with numbers. He's filling it with quality. He doesn't need shallow connections to feel valued because he's created his own value. He's built himself up so he doesn't depend on others to complete him. As Seneca wisely observed, associate with those who will make a better man of you. And this man has taken that advice to heart. He surrounds himself only with those who respect his values, support his growth, and genuinely appreciate who he is. Imagine the strength that comes from this kind of security, the kind of resilience that isn't dependent on anyone else's presence. He's found freedom in being comfortable with his own company, in knowing that he doesn't need anyone else to feel complete. And because of this, he can walk away from situations, relationships, or environments that don't align with his values. He's not tied down by the fear of being alone because he's already at peace with solitude. This man's journey isn't about isolation, it's about self-respect. He's not rejecting people. He's simply choosing the people who truly deserve a place in his life. He understands that real friendships aren't built on the surface. They require depth, mutual respect, and shared values. He's invested in connections that add genuine value to his life, rather than just filling his time. He's found that the strength he needs is already within him, and he's not afraid to lean into that. People may see his solitude and think he's missing out, that he's lonely or somehow incomplete, but he knows better. His solitude is not a void to be filled. It's a sanctuary where he finds clarity, strength, and renewal. He's content because he's filled his life with meaning rather than noise, with purpose rather than popularity. This kind of man challenges the rest of us to look at our own lives. How much of our time is spent chasing approval from others? How often do we look outside ourselves for the validation we seek? This man's story is a reminder that real fulfillment doesn't come from the applause of others, but from living a life that feels true, by building a strong relationship with himself, by becoming his own source of support. He's created a peace that lasts. He's shown that the only approval that truly matters is his own, and that the most important relationship we'll ever have is with ourselves. This man's journey is a challenge to each of us to seek strength within, to find peace in who we are, and to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. There's a quiet power in knowing that you are enough, just as you are. This man has found that power, and it's a reminder to us all that we don't need a large crowd or endless approval to live a life of meaning. He's not bound by others' opinions. He's free to walk his own path, to live a life defined by his own standards. In the end, this man's story is an invitation for each of us to discover the same kind of freedom, the freedom to live for ourselves, to define our worth, and to walk our path with a sense of peace and purpose. So, let his journey inspire you to look inward, to strengthen the relationship with yourself, and to build a foundation that can carry you, no matter who's by your side. His life is a testament to the strength of self-reliance, the power of inner peace, and the beauty of being truly comfortable in your own company. In a world overflowing with noise, constant opinions, and people eager to tell you who you should be, this man has done something rare. He's found peace in the quiet, clarity in solitude, and strength in his own company. While most are swept up by the need for attention, validation, or approval, he's taken a step back, choosing a path that allows him to listen to his own voice. He's learned that sometimes the only way to truly know yourself and grow is to distance yourself from the crowd, to silence the external chatter, and tune into what you really believe. This isn't the kind of strength that needs an audience. It's a private strength, a quiet self-assurance that few ever find because it requires facing oneself in a way that most aren't willing to do. It takes a rare courage to look inward, to confront who you are, to accept yourself completely, and, more importantly, to find peace there. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions, than your own soul." People who observe him might not understand. They might wonder why he's content without a large social circle or why he seems so comfortable in his own company, free from the need for external validation. Some may even judge him, labeling him as aloof or detached. But here's the thing. He's okay with that. He doesn't live his life based on what others think or need from him. His peace, his worth, isn't tied to someone else's perception. He's built his life on values that resonate deeply with him, not on the shifting opinions of others. This man knows, as the Stoic Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. He's made peace with the fact that not everyone will understand him, and that's fine by him. He's not chasing approval because he's already given it to himself. He's not waiting for the world to tell him he's enough because he's already decided he is. Now, this doesn't mean he's cold, distant, or uninterested in relationships. Quite the opposite. He's open to connection, but he's careful. He knows that every person who enters his life brings with them a certain energy and influence, and he respects himself enough to protect his peace. His relationships aren't built on convenience. They're rooted in depth and mutual respect. He's chosen to fill his life with people who add true value, rather than simply numbers or noise. If that means his circle is small, he's more than comfortable with it. He understands, as Seneca advised, associate with those who will make a better man of you. He's cultivated a life where every connection has purpose and meaning, and he values authenticity over appearances. Think about how different that is from the world we live in, a world that encourages us to collect friendships like trophies, to chase popularity as if it's a measure of worth. But he's not interested in appearances or accolades. His self-worth isn't tied to how many people know his name or how many people are cheering him on. His strength doesn't come from being recognized. It comes from being true to himself. He's not chasing anything outside of himself because he's already found what he needs within. This is a strength that's rare and misunderstood. It's a quiet power that doesn't need to be announced. It's simply there, steady, like a mountain grounded in its own foundation. When people look at him, they're witnessing someone who isn't afraid to be alone, someone who's found comfort in his own skin. He doesn't need anyone else to feel complete because he's already whole. And with that wholeness comes a remarkable freedom. He's free from the need to conform, from the need to seek approval, from the pressure to prove himself to anyone. He lives life on his own terms, guided by his own values and standards. He's not influenced by the noise of society's expectations or trends. This is a man who walks his path with integrity, and he's willing to face solitude if that's what it takes to stay true to himself. He knows, as Marcus Aurelius also said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. So, he simply lives his values rather than explaining or justifying them. And if that means he's misunderstood or seen as unconventional, so be it. But here's the part that most people struggle to understand. His strength and peace don't come from isolation. They come from self-reliance. He's not avoiding people. He's choosing who belongs in his life. He's not afraid of solitude because he sees it as an opportunity to grow, to reflect, and to become better. He's made solitude his ally, a space where he can connect deeply with his own thoughts, his own motivations, and his own values. He doesn't need to fill the quiet with constant company, because he finds fulfillment in his own presence. While others may avoid being alone, fearing what they might find, he leans into it, knowing that the silence is where he truly meets himself. This man's life is a powerful reminder that real security doesn't come from external validation, but from living a life that aligns with who we truly are. True strength isn't about being in the spotlight. It's about being grounded, even if no one else is watching. It's about having the courage to walk alone if that's what it takes to honor your own values. It's about building a relationship with yourself that's so solid, so genuine, that you don't need anyone else's approval to feel complete. His story challenges us to think about our own lives, to ask ourselves, are we content with who we are when the world is quiet? Do we have the courage to stand alone if it means being true to ourselves? This man's journey is an invitation to each of us to look inward, to find strength within, and to embrace the peace that comes from self-acceptance. He reminds us that there's a certain beauty, a certain power, in being at peace with oneself. And that's a power that doesn't fade with the opinions of others. It's a strength that remains steady, no matter who's around. This man is deeply committed to living a life that he can look back on with pride, a life where, even in his quietest, most solitary moments, he feels aligned with his values and true to himself. He knows that not everyone will understand the choices he's made or the path he's on, and he's more than okay with that. He doesn't seek approval or permission because he's not here to please everyone. He's here to honor his own truth. He's building a life that resonates deeply within him, a journey that he can own completely. He's fully aware that at the end of the day, he's the one who has to live with his choices. He's the one who will look in the mirror and feel the weight, or the peace, of his own decisions. That's why he's so grounded. He's constructed his life on a foundation of self-respect, integrity, and purpose. He doesn't look to the world to tell him he's on the right track because he's built an internal compass that keeps him steady. He has come to know himself deeply, to trust his own voice, and to move forward without needing validation from others. He isn't out there seeking approval or chasing affirmation because he's found a steady confidence within himself. When you meet a man like this, you're seeing someone who is genuinely free. Free from the constant pull of public opinion, free from the fear of others' judgments, and free from the limitations that come from seeking external validation. He is free to be exactly who he is, to walk his unique path, and to live a life that reflects his values. In a world where so many people are trying to fit into someone else's expectations, he has chosen to break free. His life isn't shaped by the need to be understood or praised. It's shaped by a deeper drive to remain true to himself, even when that path feels lonely. Choosing this path takes courage, a rare kind of strength that most people never experience. It takes courage to look within and to determine your worth on your own terms. This man has done that work. He's faced his fears, learned his strengths, and built a life that's solid and unshakable. He's come to a place of peace because he knows who he is, and he's entirely comfortable with that person, even if no one else understands. He's okay with walking alone if that means staying authentic, with choosing solitude over shallow friendships, and with valuing his own integrity over the need for validation. So, when you see him walking alone, don't make the mistake of thinking he's missing out. He's not searching for anything he doesn't already have. He's found something profound, something so few people ever find. He's found himself. This man has built a sense of worth that isn't linked to others' opinions, a peace that doesn't rely on anyone else's presence. He's whole, complete, and fully grounded in who he is. This is true freedom. Freedom from the need to impress, freedom from the weight of others' expectations, and freedom from any sense of lacking. When he chooses to connect with people, it's because he wants to, not because he needs to. His relationships are intentional, built on shared values and genuine respect, not on convenience or need. He understands, as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This perspective has allowed him to build an unbreakable inner strength, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be displayed or validated by anyone else. There's a beauty in walking your path, knowing that you don't need a crowd around you to feel valuable. You don't need endless praise or admiration to recognize your own worth. This man has discovered that real strength doesn't come from applause. It comes from knowing you are enough, regardless of who's watching. It's a steady strength, like a mountain unshaken by the storms around it, grounded in a solid foundation that no one else can disrupt. When people look at him, they're witnessing someone who isn't afraid to stand alone. He's not afraid of silence, of solitude, or of the truths he finds when he's alone with his thoughts. In fact, he embraces those moments because he knows they're where he grows, where he learns, and where he connects most deeply with his own values. This journey, this choice to walk his own path, challenges us to look at our own lives. How often do we seek approval from others, compromising our peace for the sake of fitting in? How many times have we ignored our own values to meet someone else's expectations? This man's story serves as a powerful reminder that real security doesn't come from the praise of others. It comes from building a life that feels true to who you are. Real strength isn't about being in the spotlight or collecting validation. It's about having the courage to walk your path even if no one else is walking it with you. It's about knowing you're enough, even if you're the only one clapping. This man's life asks us to look inward, to develop our own inner compass and to stand by our own truths. He reminds us that there's profound power in being at peace with yourself, in choosing your own company over shallow connections, and in valuing your own journey over external approval. He's built a life that's steady and fulfilling, a life where he doesn't need anyone else's applause to feel complete. And that's a freedom most people never find. This man has shown that when you find peace in your own company, when you're grounded in your own values, and when you're committed to walking your own path, there's nothing you can't face. You become unshakable, grounded, and truly whole. In the end, he'll be remembered not for the number of friends he had or the crowds that followed him, but for the integrity he carried, the strength he embodied, and the commitment he had to living authentically. This is the kind of legacy that lasts, one that isn't defined by how many people knew him, but by the way he lived his life. A man with a small circle or no friends isn't lacking. He's found something much deeper. He's found himself. That's true power. And there you have it, a look into the strength, peace, and resilience of a man who's found fulfillment within himself, embracing solitude as a source of power. If this resonates with you and you're inspired by the wisdom of living a life true to your values, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic In Your Life. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos, where we continue to explore the powerful lessons of Stoic philosophy and how they can shape our lives today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.